My name is Hannah, and I'm 26 years old. 3 months ago, my own family locked me in our basement for 3 days. They thought they were teaching me a lesson about gratitude and respect. They had no idea I had installed a hidden camera down there 2 weeks earlier. I never thought I'd be the person sharing a story like this. Growing up, I was the good daughter, the one who always said please and thank you, the one who helped with dishes without being asked. I believed family came first, always and forever. But sometimes the people closest to you can become strangers overnight. Sometimes the home you thought was safe becomes a prison. And sometimes you have to make choices that feel impossible just to survive. Let me take you back to where this all started. It was a Tuesday morning in March when everything changed. I was sitting at my kitchen table, drinking coffee and scrolling through job listings. The steam from my mug curled up like smoke signals, carrying away the last traces of my old life. I had no idea that by Friday, I'd be sitting in a courtroom, watching a judge review footage of my own family's cruelty. You see, I had just inherited a significant amount of money from my grandmother. She passed away 6 months earlier, and her will had been in probate. When the lawyer called that morning, his voice was careful and professional. "Hannah, your grandmother left you her entire estate. It's worth approximately $400,000. The number hit me like a physical force. $400,000. More money than I'd ever dreamed of having. More money than my parents had seen in their entire lives. My hands started shaking as I set down my coffee cup. I should have felt joy. I should have felt grateful. Instead, I felt a cold dread settling in my stomach like a stone. Because I knew my family. I knew how they thought about money and fairness and who deserved what. My grandmother had always been different from the rest of them. She valued education and independence. She had worked as a nurse for 40 years, saving every penny she could. While my parents struggled with debt and blame, she built a nest egg. Through discipline and sacrifice. The inheritance wasn't random or unfair. Grandma Rose had watched me struggle through college while working 3 jobs. She had seen me move back home after graduation when I couldn't find work in my field. She witnessed my parents' constant criticism about my choices and my dreams. But I knew my family wouldn't see it that way. To them, I was just the lucky one. The one who got something they deserved more. I stared at my phone for 20 minutes before calling my mom. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. When she answered, her voice was cheerful and warm. "Hi, honey. How are you doing?" "Mom, I need to tell you something important. Grandma Rose left me some money in her will." The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. I could almost hear her thoughts shifting and calculating. "How much money, Hannah?" "A lot. Like, life-changing amount." Her tone changed instantly. The warmth disappeared, replaced by something sharp and cold. "Well, isn't that interesting? I guess some people just get lucky while others work their whole lives for nothing." That conversation was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, everything shifted in my family. Phone calls became interrogations. Family dinners turned into guilt sessions. My siblings started making comments about fairness and sharing and family loyalty. If you are watching this right now, drop a comment, letting me know where you are viewing from. Before I tell you about this life-changing decision, hit like and subscribe to hear more real stories about family loyalty and betrayal that might just change how you see your own relationships. The pressure was building like steam in a kettle. I could feel something coming, some kind of breaking point. That's when I made the decision that probably saved my life. I bought a small hidden camera and installed it in our basement. I know that sounds paranoid. I know it sounds like I was looking for trouble, but something in my gut told me I needed to protect myself. Something in the way my dad looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. Something in the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered a room. I never imagined I'd need that camera the way I did. I never thought my own family would cross the line they crossed. But when they did, I had proof. And that proof changed everything. To understand how we got to that basement, you need to understand my family. We're not monsters, but we're not saints either. We're complicated people with complicated histories, and money has a way of bringing out the worst in everyone. My dad, Robert, is 54 years old and works construction when he can find jobs. He's got rough hands and a rougher temper, especially when he's been drinking. Growing up, I learned to read his moods like weather patterns. The way he held his shoulders told me if it was safe to ask for lunch money. The tone of his voice when he walked through the door determined what kind of evening we'd have. Dad always felt like the world owed him something. He'd grown up poor and stayed poor, despite working harder than anyone I knew. When good things happened to other people, he took it as a personal insult. Success wasn't something to celebrate. It was something that had been stolen from him. My mother, Linda, is 52 and works part-time at a grocery store. She's got this way of making you feel guilty for things you didn't even do. Growing up, if I got a good grade, she'd find a way to mention how my brother Marcus was struggling. If I saved money for something I wanted, she'd talk about all the bills they couldn't pay. Mom's guilt was like a fog that followed me everywhere. It made me second-guess every good thing that happened to me. Every opportunity felt like I was taking something away from someone else. That's probably why I stayed home after college instead of moving to the city like I planned. Then there's my older brother Marcus. He's 28 and has been living at home on and off since he dropped out of college 8 years ago. Marcus has this charm that makes people want to help him, but somehow every opportunity turns into a disaster. He's borrowed money from everyone in the family and never paid any of it back. Marcus was always the golden child growing up. The athlete, the popular one, the one with potential. When that potential didn't turn into success, it became everyone else's fault. The coaches who didn't see his talent, the professors who had it out for him, the employers who didn't appreciate his skills. My younger sister Becca is 23 and works at a restaurant downtown. She's got this angry energy that makes everyone walk on eggshells around her. Becca's convinced that life has been unfair to her specifically, that everyone else gets chances she never got. She measures her worth by comparing herself to others, and somehow always comes up short. What made our family dynamic so toxic was this underlying belief that there was only so much good fortune to go around. If someone got something good, it meant less for everyone else. Success wasn't celebrated, it was resented. Happiness wasn't shared, it was hoarded. Grandma Rose was different. She lived in a small apartment across town and had this way of making you feel like your dreams mattered. When I told her I wanted to study journalism, she didn't lecture me about practical careers. She asked what stories I wanted to tell. She had this old kitchen table where we'd sit and drink tea while she told me about her nursing days. The stories weren't always happy, but they were real. She'd talk about helping families through crisis, about the dignity she tried to give every patient, about building something meaningful with your life. "Hannah," she'd say, stirring honey into her tea, "don't let anyone make you small. Don't let anyone convince you that wanting more makes you greedy." After she died, I felt like I'd lost the only person who truly understood me. The only person who thought my ambitions were something to nurture rather than something to contain. The inheritance changed everything because it represented choice. For the first time in my life, I had options that didn't depend on my family's approval or support. I could move out. I could go back to school. I could take risks without worrying about having nowhere to fall back on. But having options meant my family lost control over me. And they didn't like that one bit. Have you ever been in a situation where good news felt dangerous? Where you were almost afraid to be happy because of how others might react? If you have, please share your experience in the comments. Sometimes, knowing we're not alone in these struggles makes all the difference. The tension in our house grew thicker every day after the inheritance news broke. The demands started small and reasonable. Dad mentioned that the truck needed repairs and he was short on cash. Mom talked about wanting to take a vacation for the first time in 10 years. Marcus had an idea for a business that just needed some startup capital. At first, I tried to help where I could. I paid for the truck repairs. I gave Mom money for a weekend getaway. I even listened to Marcus's business plan, which involved buying and flipping vintage motorcycles with no experience whatsoever. But every time I said yes to one request, 2 more appeared. Every act of generosity was met with an expectation of more generosity. It was like feeding stray cats. The more you give, the more they expect. And soon they're not grateful anymore. They're demanding. Becca was the most direct about it. She cornered me in the laundry room one evening, her eyes bright with resentment. You know, it's pretty selfish of you to hoard all that money while the rest of us struggle. I'm not hoarding it, Becca. I just want to be smart about it. Smart? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Smart would be helping your family instead of acting like you're better than us now. The accusation stung because part of me was starting to feel different. Having money in the bank gave me a confidence I'd never experienced before. I walked taller. I spoke up more in conversations. I didn't automatically say yes to every request or demand. That confidence threatened them in ways I didn't fully understand at the time. The real breaking point came when I announced my decision to use part of the inheritance to go back to school. I had researched graduate programs in journalism and found one that felt perfect. The application deadline was approaching, and I was excited for the first time in months. When I told them at dinner, the silence was deafening. Dad set down his fork with deliberate precision. Mom's face went pale. Marcus actually laughed out loud. You want to waste Rose's money on more school? Dad's voice was low and dangerous. She worked her whole life so you could play student again? It's not playing, Dad. It's investing in my future. Your future. He repeated the words like they tasted bad. What about our present? What about the family that's been supporting you all these years while you figured out your little dreams? Mom joined in with her special brand of emotional manipulation. Hannah, honey, I think you're being a bit selfish here. Grandma Rose would want that money to help the whole family, not just fund your personal ambitions. But it was Marcus who delivered the killing blow. Face it, Hannah, you're not special. You're not going to be some famous journalist. You're just going to waste Rose's money on another degree you'll never use while the rest of us scrape by. I felt something break inside me that night. Not just hurt feelings, but something fundamental about how I saw my family and my place in it. They didn't want me to succeed. They wanted me to stay small and grateful and dependent. That's when I decided to install the camera in the basement. I had this growing sense that they were planning something. The whispered conversations were getting more frequent. The guilt trips were getting more intense. And there was something about the way they looked at me that made my skin crawl. I bought the camera online and set it up behind some old storage boxes in the corner of the basement. It was motion activated and could record for days without being detected. I felt a bit crazy doing it, but I also felt protective of myself in a way I never had before. The inheritance had given me more than money. It had given me permission to value my own well-being over their approval. 2 days after I installed the camera, they made their move. I was coming home from a job interview when I found them all waiting in the living room. Dad, Mom, Marcus, and Becca, arranged like a tribunal. The air felt charged with intention, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. "We need to have a family meeting," Dad said. His voice had that fake calm quality that meant he was furious but trying to control it. If you've ever walked into a room and immediately known something bad was about to happen, you'll understand the chill that ran down my spine. Drop a comment if you've been in a similar situation. Sometimes recognizing those warning signs can save us from so much pain. "Sit down, Hannah." Dad's voice carried the authority I'd feared as a child. But I wasn't a child anymore, and the money in my bank account had taught me something about power. Still, I sat. The couch felt like a defendant's chair, with my family arranged in a semicircle around me. Marcus was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. Becca sat on the edge of her chair like she was ready to pounce. Mom had that disappointed look that used to make me crumble. "We've been talking," Mom began, her voice soft but dangerous. "About this situation with Rose's money. About how it's affecting our family. We think you need some time to think about what's really important," Dad added. "Some time away from all these fancy ideas about school and independence." The hair on the back of my neck stood up. "What are you talking about?" Marcus pushed off from the wall and walked closer. "We're talking about helping you remember where you came from. Who took care of you when you had nothing?" "We're talking about gratitude," Becca added, her voice sharp with resentment. I looked around at their faces and saw something that terrified me. This wasn't anger or disappointment. This was cold, calculated planning. They had discussed this. They had made decisions about my life without me. "I think I should go," I said, starting to stand. "No." Dad's voice was flat and final. "You need to hear this." Marcus moved to block the doorway while Becca stood up from her chair. The room suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. My heart started beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Here's what's going to happen," Dad continued. "You're going to take some time in the basement to think about family loyalty, to remember what matters. You're going to think about how Rose would feel knowing her money was making you selfish and ungrateful," Mom added. The basement where I had hidden the camera 2 days earlier." "You can't be serious," I whispered. "We're dead serious," Marcus said. "You've forgotten who you are, Hannah. You've forgotten that family comes first." 3 days, Dad announced. 3 days to remember what really matters. To decide if you want to be part of this family or if you want to keep pretending you're better than us. The next few minutes happened in a blur of motion and terror. When I tried to run, Marcus grabbed my arm. When I tried to scream, Becca clamped her hand over my mouth. They dragged me toward the basement door like I was a criminal instead of their daughter and sister. The basement was cold and damp, with a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. They had already prepared for this. There was a mattress on the floor, some bottled water, and a bucket in the corner that made my stomach turn. "This is insane," I said, my voice echoing off the concrete walls. "You can't just lock me up down here." "We can and we are," Dad said, from the top of the stairs. "Until you come to your senses. Until you remember that everything you have came from this family," Mom added. The door slammed shut. I heard the sound of a deadbolt sliding into place, then the scrape of something heavy being moved against the door. They were making sure I couldn't get out. I was alone in the basement of my childhood home, a prisoner of the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. The first few hours were the worst. I paced the small space like a caged animal, my mind racing between disbelief and terror. I couldn't process that my own family had actually done this, that they thought this was acceptable, that they believed 3 days of captivity would somehow make me grateful and compliant. But as the hours passed, Something else grew inside me alongside the fear. Anger. Pure, clean anger at the violation of my basic human dignity. They had taken my inheritance as an excuse to show me who they really were, and what I saw was ugly. I thought about the camera hidden in the corner, silently recording everything. The motion sensor would have activated the moment they brought me down here. It was capturing their voices, their words, their complete violation of my rights as a human being. Have you ever been in a situation where you realized the people you loved were capable of truly hurting you? That moment of recognition is devastating, but it's also liberating. Share your thoughts in the comments below. For 3 days, they kept me in that basement. 3 days of eating crackers and drinking warm water while listening to my family go about their normal lives above me. I could hear the television, smell dinner cooking, listen to conversations that felt surreal in their ordinariness. They brought me food twice a day, sliding it through a slot they had cut in the door. Dad would lecture me about family values. Mom would ask if I was ready to make the right choices. Marcus would taunt me about my pride and independence. Becca would remind me that this was all my fault for being selfish. But I wasn't breaking the way they expected. Instead, I was getting stronger, clearer, more determined than I had ever been in my life. On the 3rd day, I heard sirens. Then, shouting. Then footsteps on the basement stairs. When the door opened, it wasn't my family standing there. It was 2 police officers and my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. Mrs. Patterson had seen me come home 3 days earlier but hadn't seen me leave. When she knocked to check on me and my parents acted strangely, she got suspicious. She had called for a wellness check. The police took one look at the basement setup and immediately arrested my parents and siblings. The mattress on the floor, the bucket in the corner, the deadbolt on the outside of the door. It was obviously false imprisonment, possibly kidnapping. I was taken to the hospital for evaluation, then to the police station to give my statement. When I told them about the hidden camera, they went back to collect it immediately. The footage was everything I hoped it would be. Clear audio of their threats. Video of them dragging me downstairs against my will. Documentation of false imprisonment. The charges were filed within a week. My parents faced kidnapping and false imprisonment charges. Marcus and Becca were charged as accomplices. The evidence from my camera made the case straightforward, but the legal victory felt hollow. I had won, but I had lost my family in the process. Even though they had betrayed me first, even though they had committed actual crimes against me, I still felt the grief of that loss. The court case took 8 months to resolve. My family tried to claim they were just trying to help me, that it was an intervention gone wrong. But the camera footage was damning. Their own words convicted them. Dad got 18 months in prison. Mom got 12 months. Marcus and Becca got probation and community service. The judge said she had never seen such a clear case of family exploitation and abuse. 1 year later, I'm sitting in my new apartment in a different city, writing this story. I used the inheritance money to go back to school, just like I planned. I'm halfway through my graduate program and working part-time at a local newspaper. I don't speak to my family anymore. They've tried to reach out a few times, usually when they need money or want to blame me for their legal troubles. But I've learned something valuable about boundaries and self-respect. The money didn't change me into a different person. It just gave me the freedom to become who I was meant to be. It showed me that I deserved to be treated with basic human dignity, even by people who shared my DNA. I think about Grandma Rose often. I think she would be proud of how I used her gift. Not just the money, but the confidence to value my own well-being over other people's demands. The courage to set boundaries even when it hurt. The strength to choose my own path even when it meant walking alone. Some people say family is everything, that blood is thicker than water. But I've learned that family is about love and respect, not biology. Real family doesn't lock you in basements to teach you gratitude. Real family celebrates your success instead of resenting it. I've built new relationships now. Friends who support my dreams instead of trying to contain them. Mentors who see potential in me instead of threat. I'm learning what healthy love looks like, and it's nothing like what I grew up with. If you're in a toxic family situation, please know that you deserve better. You deserve to be celebrated, not controlled. You deserve to pursue your dreams without guilt or punishment. It's okay to choose your own well-being over family harmony. What would you have done in my situation? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and self-respect? Share your thoughts below. Looking back now, that basement was both my lowest point and my liberation. Those 3 days of captivity taught me more about strength and self-worth than 26 years of trying to please people who were determined to keep me small. The hidden camera saved my life in more ways than one. It provided legal evidence that protected me in court, but more importantly, it gave me proof that I could trust my own instincts. When something felt wrong, it usually was wrong. When people showed me who they really were, I learned to believe them. I keep that camera footage on a secure drive, not because I enjoy reliving that trauma, but because it reminds me how far I've come. Sometimes when I doubt myself or feel guilty for maintaining boundaries, I watch a few minutes of it. I hear their voices justifying cruelty as love, and I remember why I made the choices I made. My therapist says trauma can either make you smaller or stronger, depending on how you process it. I chose to let it make me stronger. Every day, I choose to see my survival as evidence of my worth, rather than proof of my damage. The journalism program has been everything I hoped it would be. I'm specializing in investigative reporting with a focus on family abuse stories. There's something powerful about turning your pain into purpose, about using your experience to help others who might be trapped in similar situations. I've written several articles about financial abuse within families, about how money can be used as a weapon of control. The response has been overwhelming. So many people have shared their own stories of family members who tried to guilt, manipulate, or even threaten them over inheritance money. One woman wrote to tell me about her brothers who tried to convince her that her mother's will was invalid because she didn't deserve the house she inherited. Another person shared how their family demanded they give up a scholarship because it would make others feel bad about their own lack of opportunities. These stories remind me that my experience wasn't unique. Family financial abuse is more common than people realize because victims often feel too guilty or ashamed to talk about it. We're taught that family loyalty means accepting mistreatment, that questioning toxic behavior makes us ungrateful. If you're dealing with family financial pressure or guilt about your success, please know that your achievements don't take anything away from others. Your dreams and goals matter. Your right to make choices about your own life and money is fundamental. Here's what I wish I had known before everything happened. You don't owe anyone your dreams. You don't owe anyone your future. You don't owe anyone access to resources that were given specifically to you, even if they're family members who think they deserve it more. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. Protecting yourself isn't betrayal. Choosing your own well-being over family harmony isn't cruelty. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable toxic behavior, even when that refusal has consequences. I want you to know that if you're in a situation where family members are pressuring you about money, inheritance, or financial decisions, you have options. Document everything. Save text messages and emails. Record conversations if it's legal in your state. Tell trusted friends what's happening so they can support you. And if you ever feel unsafe, trust that instinct. My hidden camera was an act of self-protection that saved my life. Don't ignore warning signs because you want to believe the best about people you love. The comment section is a place where we can support each other through these difficult family dynamics. Have you experienced financial pressure from family members? How did you handle it? What advice would you give to someone dealing with similar manipulation? I read every comment and try to respond when I can. Your stories matter. Your experiences matter. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these struggles makes all the difference. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel. I share real stories about family relationships, personal growth, and the courage it takes to choose yourself when it matters most. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for creating a community where these difficult truths can be shared and supported. And remember, you are worth more than other people's comfort. You deserve to be celebrated, not contained. Your dreams matter, your boundaries matter, you matter. I'll see you in the next video, where I'll be sharing another real story about the complicated dynamics of family loyalty and personal freedom. Until then, take care of yourselves and remember that choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival.